internal battle appears to be growing over who his Secretary of State should be. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kennedy. Great to have you here today. And also joining us on the couch is co-host of After the Bell on the Fox Business Network, Melissa Francis, Fox News political and legal analyst Ebony Williams, and Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth. And, of course, today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, the host of the David Webb Show on SiriusXM's Patriot Channel. It's David Webb himself, and he is outnumbered.
And smiling.
Absolutely.
I'm always when I'm with you
the
guys.
day before Turkey Day, we are snared in your web.
There you go.
That was good. Well played. Well played. We saw what you did there. Yeah.
There you go.
Height of the five. Time to start it up. There you go on the couch. Here we go. President-elect Donald Trump is spending Thanksgiving in Florida as he continues to round out his White House team. Today, he announced he has tapped South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and she has accepted. She's the first woman he's chosen for a top-level cabinet post. The president-elect has also offered retired neurosurgeon and former primary rival Ben Carson a position as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Carson says he will consider it. Meantime, when it comes to Secretary of State, it looks like there may be an internal tug of war over whether the job should go to Mitt Romney or Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Trump reportedly leaning toward Romney, but former House Speaker Newt Gingrich says he's got a lot of concerns about the man who repeatedly spoke out against the president-elect during the campaign.
I would be concerned, one, I think the vast majority of Trump's supporters will initially be very unhappy and will be reminded of all the things that Romney said over the year. And two, because Romney does represent a very different viewpoint. I mean, authentically, I'm not sure whose Secretary of State he would be. Romney wanted to be in President-elect Trump's job, you know, and to what degree would Romney, once he became Secretary of State, represent himself wandering around the world?
All right, very interesting. So, David Webb, who does this speak more about? Mitt Romney and his ability to be our chief diplomat, or Donald Trump and his ability to overcome past rifts?
So this is the debate that will probably occupy tables throughout Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Look, Romney has certain skills that would be applicable to Secretary of State. But I remind everyone that the Secretary of State represents the president's vision. And this is what we need. We need a Secretary of State that will carry out the job he's given. This is the apprentice for politics. He's bringing everybody in. You've got Giuliani. He's a loyalist. You know, Giuliani's someone who has stood by him from the beginning. But the different skill sets, who knows how it'll play out. I think people should worry less about being upset and more about assembling the right team to govern the country, because it's bigger than the president.
Well, how different are these two people? What does a Giuliani State Department look like versus a Romney State Department? I mean, and what is President-elect Trump choosing?
That's so interesting, because Rudy Giuliani is obviously very tough, very direct, very hard and harsh in a way that, you know, to me is not terribly diplomatic, but does get a lot of things done. When you look at Mitt Romney, to me, he represents sort of the opposite. You know, I mean, other than the way he treated Donald Trump during the campaign, he is usually pretty diplomatic. He's a turnaround guy. I like that, because the State Department and our foreign relations around the world needs a restart, needs a complete turnaround. I like what Donald Trump is doing, bringing in these opposing point of views. This is a lot of what people expected after the Republican National Convention. We didn't see it then. We do see it now. It makes him seem magnanimous. It's also smart because he gets the talents from the people who opposed him.
And also, you know, you don't only have Mitt Romney in consideration. Nikki Haley was also an outspoken opponent of Donald Trump early on. She backed Rubio and then Cruz, and it looks like there's a place for her in this administration. What do you think of Nikki Haley?
I personally love it, and I think that he needs to have diversity of thought, because that's the whole point. Get a bunch of smart, intelligent people that can do the job and collaboratively make the country better in all different aspects of the government. And I think that's exactly what he should be doing. And also, I think what Donald Trump is realizing right now as the president-elect is how important coalition building is as well. And you look at even in the Senate, Republicans are probably going to end up with 52 in the Senate. That's very thin margins, right? So he's going to need the entirety of the party on board with his vision for the country. And so I think it is smart to bring people in that represent different factions of the Republican Party so that he can move some of those things forward. And also, if you just look at the people he's picked so far, he has picked incredibly, wonderful choices so far with people with a lot of experience in that background. You look at someone like Jeff Sessions, former Attorney General of Alabama, Alabama. General Flynn, he, along with General McChrystal, turned JSOC into the preeminent terrorist hunting organization and a lethal terrorist hunting organization in the country. You look at someone like Nikki Haley, a governor. She's very smart. She's very well liked.
Youngest governor in the country.
Yeah, so she's going to be able to get the job done. Same thing as Mike Pompeo as well. He graduated top in his class at
West Point.
West Point. Sorry, West Point. And he was a member of the House Intelligence Committee. So all of his picks have been very smart with a lot of experience in their field. I think he's making great decisions, and people should rest easy with that.
Well, speaking of experience, someone who does not have a lot of experience in the offered position is Dr. Ben Carson. And I have tremendous respect for Dr. Ben Carson. He sat on this couch with us, and he's fantastic. However, this is a statement from his own business manager, Armstrong Williams. Dr. Carson feels he has no government experience. He's never run a federal agency. The last thing he would want to do is take a position that could cripple the presidency.
But that's it. He was talking about HHS when that statement was made. And a lot of people thought that he would be placed or nominated for one of the health positions, like HHS.
And I think that would make a little bit
HUD
more.
is vastly different. Why does that make more sense for Dr. Carson?
I think it makes less sense. That's kind of my point. I think it makes even less sense that Dr. Carson would be running the housing and urban development. He's talking about home ownership and just things that seem very much out of his scope to me.
No, I disagree. I disagree because I think that what he understands is a fundamentally different approach to inner cities. And he understands the idea that, you have to raise people up. He was so outspoken about how handouts, subjugate the very group of people that they're trying to help.
Is that what HUD has become?
I don't think that's what
I actually think it is.
No, I feel like that's what it shouldn't be. And I want to go back to this. I think there's something to be said for staying in your lane. Yeah. And I think Dr. Carson will be well suited for many things. I don't think HUD is one of those things.
And here's why.
That's a very establishment position. Just do what you've always done.
Well,
and
or do things that you have a skill set that is uniquely qualified.
But why do we want to continually put bureaucrats in to run agencies?
Well, I don't think
but let me take Lisa's list and go with it, as we all know.
Except for with the exception of my Rick Perry moment.
With the exception of your Perry moment. When you look at who Donald Trump is bringing in versus Barack Obama, you don't have a bunch of theoreticians who wrote papers in college. You have people with significant skills. But let me continue with Dr. Carson.
Go ahead.
Dr. Carson has also run organizations. He has governing, as in management type structure experience.
I'm only saying what his own people said, David, but let me finish this point. If Mitt Romney was not to get Secretary of State, I actually think he would be a great HUD guy. I'm going to tell you why. First of all, his father did a pretty nice job doing the position for President Nixon, and he's got experience. So I'm not suggesting put a bureaucrat in there. I'm not saying go establishment on this. I'm saying put someone who is best suited. And I'm simply saying that I don't believe Dr. Carson.
You need someone who understands the needs of housing and urban development.
That's part of it.
David, allow me to take the contrarian approach. I would like to see a little bit. Yeah, I would love to see Donald Trump put some cabinet secretaries in place who would abolish their own departments. I think that would be.
That would explain Dr. Ben Carson.
I love Ben Carson playing hard to get, too. We know he wants it. Ben Carson's like, I don't know. I'm going to give it.
By the way, I would have put Carson in
some sort of role.
For some sort of role.
I would have put education.
Education would be good.
Because he would abolish and bring down the Department of Education.
Well, now that Michelle Rhee has said that her name is taken out of consideration, that's a very important position considering what the president-elect has said about Common Core alone. So we'll see many aspects of this administration still taking shape. President-elect Donald Trump appears to be walking back some more campaign promises. In a closed-door meeting Tuesday with the New York Times, he said he's pledging to keep an open mind on climate change and whether it has affected human activity, saying, quote, I'm looking at it very closely. I think there is some connectivity. It depends on how much. It also depends on how much it's going to cost our companies. The president-elect also appeared to change his mind about the use of torture to extract information from terrorism suspects, telling the Times about a conversation he had with potential Defense Secretary nominee General James Mattis about waterboarding. Quote, he said, I never found it to be useful. He said, I've always found give me a pack of cigarettes and a couple of beers, and I do better with that than I do with torture. And I was very impressed by that answer. I was surprised because he's known as being like the toughest guy. The president-elect also backing away from his vow to investigate Hillary Clinton over her private server and the Clinton Foundation. Members of the House Judiciary Committee reacting. Listen.
Congress has an obligation to do oversight. I think when you think about equal treatment under the law, it's incumbent upon us to get to the facts and get to the truth here so that the American people know that, in fact, there is a standard that is in place called equal treatment under the law.
We're way premature on the actual ongoing work of the FBI and others. You know, this president, I'm positive, is going to let his attorney general and the FBI director do their job.
All right, and how do you think Donald Trump is going to influence these further congressional investigations?
Well, I mean, this is so interesting because here he is sounding a moderate tone, sounding very sane when those who opposed him from the beginning wanted him to come in and act like a lunatic because then they would be proven correct. So he's talking in a manner that sounds more sedate, more rational, but at the same time, he's putting in people, if you look at Sessions, you look at Bannon, who are more hardliners. So in a way, there's sort of something for everyone here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a very smart way to play these different things.
All right, but what about some conservatives who say that he's going back on these core fundamental campaign promises that he made? You know, when he told Hillary Clinton that if he were in charge of the law, she'd be in jail. People chanting "lock her up," not only at the RNC, but at rallies. And these are, you know, some of his most passionate supporters, not to mention the shifts on climate change and even the border fence.
Well, I would say he's not even in office yet, so let's give the guy a try. And remember, everyone was talking about, oh, he's going to change his stance on immigration. There was all this talk. That's all some of the other networks ran, you know, on the hour, every hour. And he evidently, or he ended up not. So, you know, let's give the guy a chance. He's not even in office yet. He's president-elect. And regarding climate change, I couldn't care less what he says about it. The most important part of his statement was the latter part and what it does to companies. And the problem is that President Obama has prioritized this left-wing ideology on the climate and climate change to the detriment of American jobs, to the detriment of energy exploration
and
of the country.
Sacrificing GDP. But that's also what this Paris Climate Treaty does. You know, and so if he's going to go along with, you know, ultimately the leftist international community on this, how is it going to hurt businesses in this
I don't
country?
think he's going to go along with it. I think he's just put it on the table. But I do want to address the DOJ. We want an independent DOJ. They're investigating the Clinton Foundation. They're looking into other issues. The president can't order the attorney general to do something. He can work with Congress to go after her in congressional hearings. What he said makes sense. Americans want a DOJ that is impartial, that goes out and does the job of carrying out law enforcement. So for Jim Jordan and the others to come out, they're playing politics a bit with this, when frankly Congress, I think, could have done a lot more in the past few years. They had control of the House. They needed to accomplish something more on Hillary Clinton.
But Ebony, you're a lawyer, and you see the people on the legal side in Congress, and they're the ones who still very much want this to be played out and want justice to be served. Jim Jordan, one of the toughest questioners of Hillary Clinton when she sat for the most recent Benghazi hearings.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree totally with what David Webb just said here. We expect the DOJ to be apolitical, and I think one of the biggest casualties, I think there were many, around Hillary Clinton's candidacy and all of those investigations that took place was we saw our DOJ become incredibly politicized. And it really made me sad. It broke my heart as an attorney in this country. And so I would encourage President-elect Trump to step back from that. Of course, you're overseeing things, but let your DOJ do its business. Let your AG do his business. He's put Sessions in. I don't have any doubt that Jeff Sessions will have a very hardline approach to this process. And furthermore, in general, I agree with you, Melissa. I think President-elect Trump is playing this very smart. He has a bit of a blank check, in my opinion, around how far he can go on certain things. It's certainly a wide check. And people voted for him because of him, primarily, I believe. And I do think that they will give him and be more forgiving to some deviance on some of these policies, as long as it's not too extreme. You can't totally walk back immigration, of course, but I do think he has some playing room.
Well, and everyone was saying, oh, he's an authoritarian. He's not going to listen to anyone. He's not going to listen to any of his advisors. And now he's meeting with people and he's saying, oh, that's a good point. I'm going to weigh that. I'm going to consider that, which is exactly what we would want our commander-in-chief to do, is to surround himself with the best people, to listen to them, to come up with innovative ideas, to cut down some of the bureaucracy and red tape that has been stifling job creation in the country, preventing America to move forward in a positive way. So let's just give the guy a chance.
Well, you talk about tax cuts, you talk about regulation, and that may be adding to what is being called the Trump bump. U.S. stocks soaring to record highs since Election Day. So will it continue, and do we really have the president-elect to thank? Plus, a liberal arts college is taking down the American flag. Officials say the move is to promote a meaningful dialogue. But is this really the way to go, or just a slap in the face to all Americans? We will discuss more from the couch in moments.
A Fox News alert for you now. We are keeping a close eye on the markets where U.S. stocks have soared to record highs. Taking a look at the numbers as we trade right now, the Dow still trading above 19,000, up 32 on the day so far. Yesterday, it closed above 19,000 for the first time in history. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, the Russell 2000 also all closed at record highs for the second day in a row. Take a look at the numbers since the election. Some are calling it the Trump bump. Analysts say stocks are being bolstered in part by hopes that Mr. Trump's election will lead to higher growth and some inflation, which is usually a dirty word, but we need some. Kennedy, we haven't seen a lot of inflation. This is the unleashing of those of the animal spirits in the market. People are optimistic that we are going to grow, that he's going to unleash business.
That's right. Free the market, unshackle it, and the Fed. We may not end the Fed anytime soon, but it definitely looks like we're headed toward rate hikes. And now analysts are saying that this is a market driven by good news, potential prosperity, tax cuts for businesses, get rid of some of these regulations at least. It's a good place to start. And that sort of optimism is going to go a lot further than the Fed intentionally and unnaturally keeping the market propped up with low interest rates.
Absolutely. And Lisa, this is yet another thing that all the pundits got wrong. They said that the market was going to tank. Wall Street wanted Hillary Clinton. We knew that because she was bought and paid for. I mean, Goldman Sachs and everyone else had hired her to come in and do the speeches. But in reality, Donald Trump is better for the economy overall. Is that what the market's showing us, in your opinion?
Exactly. I think that is. And you literally took the words out of my mouth, because that's exactly what I was wanting to say, is this is in direct contradiction to what everyone was saying. And I think it is because Donald Trump does believe in pro-growth policies. He's already talking about rolling back, and I'll keep harping on energy just because I think there's so much opportunity there for the country. And even just talking about on day one, rolling back some of the obstruction. You look at something like fracking, it's added, billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to the GDP, created 1.4 million jobs. The Wall Street Journal has said it has saved Americans just since 2012 alone $32 billion in energy costs.
Why the Russians hate it.
But yet President Obama wants to pursue federal regulation against fracking in the country, despite the fact that it's originally been in the state's hands. So he's roped off so much federal lands to energy exploration as well. So he has stood in the way of so much growth, so much positivity for this country and jobs.
David, one of the things that I'm anticipating and loving is this idea of returning economic efficiency to all of these different things. I mean, as opposed to, it seems like anybody in government who's out there spending my money doesn't care about efficiency. And Donald Trump is someone who has run a profit and loss statement, who has run a construction project for a profit and isn't wasteful.
No, and when you look at government, what's the incentive to be efficient?
None. Right.
Versus companies. So let's break apart the markets. You've got the Dow, the multinationals. You've got the NASDAQ, which is more the tech stocks. They're looking at it from different perspectives. The global companies look at all the regulations overseas, see America looking to open the market for them. So they're going to come back and invest more money here. You look at the possibility for growth. That happens at the NASDAQ. A lot of the smaller companies, a lot of the tech stocks that are coming out, they're saying maybe there's a possibility I can actually grow and expand. So for different reasons, they're all looking at this. It's a matter of perception in the market, as you've talked about over the years, as I've talked about. They see it, they say it's going to be good for me, that animal spirit, and I'm going to go out and do something.
And Ebony, I mean, one of his main priorities is bringing those overseas dollars that companies have trapped elsewhere back to the U.S. so they can invest in open factories. It's staying away because of the tax treatment. But once that money comes back, if he changes the rules, that opens up a whole new world for jobs, investment, factories, exciting times.
Absolutely, and that's the expectation I think we're seeing reflected in the market. Absolutely, it's a good one. I think this is what we have to keep in mind, this point of efficiency that you bring up, Melissa. I think that's the most, for me, exciting part. Because for so long, we have allowed government to be such poor stewards of our money with no consequence, right? Never. You never hear about these people getting fired or laid off or even suspended. So my goodness, if it takes a Donald Trump to come in here and say, if you do not manage these funds properly, whether it's the VA or any other State Department, you're out of here. It's an incentive, it's accountability, and it makes me happy.
And they're fired. I love it. All right, there you go. President-elect Trump playing down concerns about conflicts of interest, saying he can still run his businesses while being president, and that the law is on his side. But some Democrats see this as a big opportunity to go after him. Well, it's a showdown looming on Capitol Hill as President Obama is reporting reportedly planning to shore up the Iran nuclear deal before leaving office.
Welcome back to the couch. This is Outnumbered. President-elect Donald Trump shrugging off concerns about potential conflicts of interest arising from his businesses. Mr. Trump telling the New York Times there's no law that keeps him from running his empire from the Oval Office, but also admitting he would like to do something about his business entanglements. He told the New York Times, quote, "In theory, I could run my business perfectly, then run the country perfectly. There's never been a case like this. The law's totally on my side. The president can't have a conflict of interest." Democrats now seizing on the issue and urging action. Senator Ben Cardin pushing a resolution calling for Mr. Trump to avoid financial conflicts with his business dealings abroad. And Senator Elizabeth Warren, there she is, and Congressman Elijah Cummings sending a letter to the Government Accountability Office calling for a review, saying, quote, "We are concerned about reports of disarray within a chaotic transition and ask that your review address several concerns, including conflicts of interest that related to business holdings of Mr. Trump and his family, potential violations of protocol and security precautions related to Mr. Trump's communications with foreign leaders, and transparency related to the use of taxpayer funds in the transition." Oh, David, I mean, that is a whole laundry list of stuff.
I'm surprised he didn't call for the firing squad for Donald Trump in that one statement. Look, Elijah Cummings is a hack who plays the role he has to play for the Democrats. There are bans on donations from foreign governments, money transfers, ask the Clintons about that. There are conflict of interest issues, and of course, he's going to be careful, but there really isn't a legal prohibition. There's just working within the existing structure of the federal government. By the way, the Government Accountability Office, of which I've actually run a department that's been audited by them, they're an audit body. There has to be an issue for a review. They can go out preemptively and look at things, but there's not much else they can do. This is political gamesmanship. It's dishonest gamesmanship. By the way, Trump has a farm team. He can turn this business over to his kids. He can hand it off to them, and they're more than capable of running it.
And Lisa, on one hand, you know, obviously voters wanted something different. They didn't want a politician, you know, and perhaps a politician doesn't have a real estate empire because they've been so busy concentrating power in politics. So on one hand, you have that, but on the other hand, we've seen what conflicts of interest can do to a politician with the Clinton Foundation. So how do you make sure that he doesn't further enrich his companies by abusing the power of the presidency?
Well, you're right. The American people did want a business guy. They did want an outsider. He's going to be the richest commander-in-chief this nation has ever seen. And it's sort of ironic, too, that the people who are criticizing right now are the same people who couldn't care less about Hillary Clinton's Clinton Foundation. So there's a bit of irony there. But from a political lens, which is the lens in which I view the world, I do think there's a danger for him because right now he does have a Republican majority, but he may not in 2018. And whenever you're the party in such control as the Republican Party is right now, there's always a danger in a midterm election. And so if I was him, I would be looking ahead at 2018. And if Democrats end up taking the Senate, for instance, there's going to, or even the House for that matter, you know, there's going to be congressional hearings. There's going to be increased scrutiny for him, which he could get in trouble politically looking ahead to 2020. So I think he needs to have a solid a way in which he divests himself from the business that he can point to of taking the proper precautions just to protect himself politically.
But we've talked about this. You know, we talked about the ways you protect yourself. You talk about trusts, but there's so much there. And he has even said, you know, I've got real estate. I can't just simply sell it off and, you know, buy T-bills.
No, I mean, it would be ideal if he could divest himself of the business and sell all his interest to his family. Even then, his family would be in charge. And so how do you avoid the appearance of a conflict? Anything he does, you know, it's going to look like he's doing favors for, you know, his family members that still own the business. If he does any business in Scotland, it impacts the currency. You know, immediately someone's going to scream that the golf course benefited from it and his kids benefited from it, even if he didn't. So it kind of feels like a no-win. He does have to be extra careful. Like you said, I mean, he really opens himself herself up to reprisal down the line, but I actually don't see an easy fix. I mean, one of my ideas was to put someone in charge, you know, an independent sort of auditor that could stand there and be totally transparent all the time.
Yeah.
But that's hard to even pick the person.
Well, let me say
Wait, hold on one second. I want to get to Ebony because we heard some of this from Mitt Romney when he was running for president in 2012, and he was going out of his way to say that my money is in a blind trust. I don't know where it goes. I don't know how much money I have. I've always wanted to be in that position. To have so much. I really have no idea how rich
it's
I am.
really nice to run for president when you're really filthy rich, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Legally, Trump's right. There is no legal issue for him. But there is the appearance of impropriety, which is important ethically. Also, President-elect Trump, well, candidate Trump, I should say, spoke to this. He talked about a blind trust. But the issue is a blind trust is an independent financial advisor really overseeing everything. So there's distance there. But Trump talks about a blind trust with Ivanka, Eric, and
Don Jr.
Don Jr.
Yeah, not very blind.
Being top. So not as blind,
Poor
right? As one
Tiffany.
would
But
think.
here's my
He didn't
point.
even name Tiffany. It's so shady.
But here's the thing. They're going to attack him anyway, no matter what he does. So how about just doing the right thing? And for the Elijah Cummings of the world, the Senator Warren.
What's the right thing?
Just ignore them. They're going to attack you anyway.
You said do the right thing. What's the right thing?
The right thing is to just do his job as president, let his companies do their work. And frankly, there's got to be a little bit of a pushback on the dishonest Democrats. We're going to attack. If he said something, they're going to attack. If he runs his company a certain way, they're going to attack. Screw it.
Who cares
just do
about
what
that?
you got to do
He's
with
gotta
your
do what he
job.
needs to do.
Okay. Congressional Republicans urging President Obama not to take any further action to reinforce the Iran nuclear deal before he leaves office. House Speaker Paul Ryan and two others sending a letter after a Wall Street Journal report that the president is considering measures to strengthen the deal. Their letter reads in part, quote, President-elect Trump deserves the opportunity to assess United States policy towards Iran without your administration imposing or implementing additional measures that could impact the incoming administration's ability to develop its policy. But here's what House Press Secretary Josh Earnest had to say about this.
The United States is certainly going to make sure we're fulfilling our commitments to make sure that the deal doesn't fall apart. We know that our allies, the president, had the opportunity to talk about this with some of the leaders of countries who also were a part of the international agreement to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, and they share that sentiment. The next administration will have to decide what they want to do moving forward, but the risks of pulling out of that agreement or doing something in violation of that agreement are grave.
I mean, Kennedy, in violation of that agreement, Iran's already violated it at least twice by having too much heavy water on hand.
Yeah.
They went on in that article to say the people that were for it, saying that just show how well it's worked. Are you kidding?
No, I mean, it hasn't worked well.
No.
All you have to do is look at the empirical evidence. And I think this is what the administration does. They make things so complicated. And we've seen the same thing with the ACA. And that's they're doing. They're overcomplicating the deal and trying to solidify it. So it's impossible because, you know, this is one of the cornerstones of his legacy, the Iran deal and the ACA. And if you look at them, they're both essentially falling apart. So he's doing whatever he can to throw some spackle on the cracks and hope that the house doesn't fall down.
David, they try to make the point that it's working, but as I said, you know, they violated the heavy water part of the agreement, and on the other side, they won't let in U.S. inspectors to prove the president's point. The president says they're further from getting a bomb. We don't have any evidence to that because we can't inspect.
They actually provide the inspection samples and they get to
Right.
review it. Look, Kennedy's already covered that. Let me cover Obama, the rejected and repudiated leftist that has been in office for almost 8 years. He will do anything he can between now and the inauguration to complicate the next presidency. And here's a perfect example. There's a program on the border, Operation Phalanx. It's funded through 2017. It's electronic surveillance against drug traffickers primarily and others. They canceled it 2 weeks ago. Why? It's a funded program. Obama will do everything he can to keep things in place. To your point, Kennedy, they make complex legislative actions, deals, etc., because it's harder to peel them out of government.
Yeah.
It's harder to repeal them. This is about simplifying what needs to be simplified and can be simplified in government.
Beyond legacy, the desire for this deal has to do with money. I mean, the countries that have already gone in and made deals in order to exploit what is a market that has been off limits in Iran, that's what President Obama plans to do, to try and get more companies in before he leaves office so it's harder to extract them later.
Yeah, well, look, I thought this was a bad deal to begin with. You know, there was just, here's the reason I say that. There was no way for us to understand what we were getting out of it. You know, it was very clear what Iran got from this deal.
Yeah.
I am still trying to figure out what America got from this deal. So in this case, I actually don't fault the president, David, for doing what he can to preserve, you know, his impact on the world. But on this, it was never good to begin with. Just fall back.
Well,
fall
don't
back
preserve
at this
a
point.
bad impact on the
But
world.
he wouldn't. Obviously, he
I
wouldn't
would
see it
fault
that
him
way.
for that.
Obviously, he doesn't see it that way. If he did, he wouldn't have implemented
Let's get Lisa in for go ahead.
And Ebony's not alone in her rejection of this deal. The majority of Americans rejected this deal from day one because they realized it was a bad one, and not to mention the increased aggression that we have seen from the Iranians as well. But I find it a little bit funny, though, because President Obama just recently went on his last foreign tour, right? And he had to eat crow because he also took the unprecedented action of using those trips to criticize Donald Trump as a candidate abroad. And he had to eat crow because this is a rejection of his policies. And not to mention, what did he do in the first 100 days? He went on an apology tour, apologizing to 3 separate continents. And that is the very reason why Hillary Clinton did not win this election, because the American people want to see strength. They don't want to see bad deals like the Iranian deal. And he's trying to do anything he can to save face and try to save this legacy that was rejected.
Absolutely. All right.
Officials at Hampshire College in Massachusetts have decided to stop flying American flags on campus. It all began after school officials pushed to lower the flag to half staff after the presidential election. And what school leaders say was about escalating hate-based violence and not about the results. But someone took the flag and they burned it. Now the college president, says they are removing flags to promote what they call meaningful and respectful dialogue on campus, but also that students can still fly individual flags if they so choose. The Hampshire president, Jonathan Lash, admitting that the decision has been especially painful to our Hampshire colleagues who are veterans or families of veterans, saying it will enable us to instead focus our efforts on addressing racist, misogynistic, Islamophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBT rhetoric and behaviors. Well, Ebony, that sure is a lot of antis and a lot of phobics and a mouthful, no less. Yeah, and a mouthful, no less. But what does it say about this college that they would remove the American flag?
You know, it's really sad. It's sad to me. I'm all about First Amendment rights. I'm all about respectful disagreement, dialogue, discussion, and discourse. That is really, really the thing I'm most grateful for from my college experience. It helped prepare me for a career in litigation. But this is sad for these children and these students, because under what theory do you deprive them of a symbol of their country in order to spark desire to debate? Those two cannot be correlated, Lisa. That is a dangerous, dangerous correlation. And it really is sad. And I hate that has become this questioning of patriotism. I mean, let's just call it what it is. This kind of extraction of patriotism and pride in country has become equivalent with progressiveness. And it's really sad to me.
Well, David, we've seen a lot of this, shutting down of the debate, especially on college campuses, if you don't agree with a more leftist viewpoint of the world. Does that concern you sort of just about the future of the country?
Yeah, it does, because it trains another generation of people who are unwilling to look at the debate, the discussion, or an adversarial position. I want to go to this list of anti and the American flag. Racist, misogynistic, Islamophobic, immigrants, anti-Semitic, anti-LGBT, all of this. The American flag has actually stood for fixing all these problems, not only here in America, but around the world. We've turned the course on slavery, on women's rights, on gay rights. Look at this nation and look at what this flag represents.
Okay,
this
can
flag
I push
has
back a
done
little bit,
what's
David?
right.
I think that for some people, like Colin Kaepernick and others that have kind of brought the flag into this controversial position this year, their attitude is this. You're right. Those are the ideals of the American flag. And when they feel that America is not living up to her best ideals, from the perspective of some, then there's a need to challenge her to be better. I'm only saying that you don't extract the flag.
It's such a luxury to have this conversation. These students, though.
Yeah,
Tucker Carlson was debating one of these kids and made the point that median income in this country is $55,000. More than half the families in this country live on less than what it costs to go to this college for 1 year. Yeah. And they're sitting back and they have the luxury of having this conversation and not not dealing with any real world problems. I wonder if they're really being prepared.
Well, and Kennedy, you're a mom, so this school costs $62,000. Speaking of income, speaking of cost, what message does this send the parents who are sending their kids there?
I think it's ridiculous, and I think it's interesting because a lot of these students, especially the freshmen who've just started, probably thought that they were going to go to college for free under a President Hillary Clinton.
So you're right.
I'd be curious to talk about the average median income in this country. I wonder what the average median income is for a Hampshire college student.
Yeah.
You know, and how practical those degrees are. But, you know, again, there's so many federal grants and plans that bolster the student loan cartel. And, you know, why is the federal government funding all of this when these schools end up being so anti-free speech and anti-American? And, you know, we just saw it at University of Delaware when they wanted to cancel an America party because it had an American theme.
Yeah.
And a lot of these places, they've lost their minds. They don't bolster them. Why are people going to college in the first place?
You know, I'm sorry. I am so passionate about this issue. I've got to close one thing here,
Okay.
though. You bring up Colin Kaepernick. The American flag has stood to fix problems around the world. Let me ask Colin Kaepernick a question. What are you going to stand for? If you're going to sit down when the flag is stood for all these things that are solving problems around the world, what makes Colin Kaepernick stand up? I wish some reporter would ask him that question.
Well, and hopefully they will, but we're going to end on that note. So arguments at Thanksgiving dinner are as traditional as turkey and pumpkin pie. But this year, lots of Americans say they feel extra stressed, fearing family members will roast them in political discussions. But you can't get burned if you're uninvited because of your politics.
Is your Thanksgiving invitation lost in the mail? Some people are saying their political views are getting them uninvited from family gatherings this year. On top of that, more than half of Americans admit that they are stressed out about the possibility of political discussion at the dinner table, according to a new national survey. Many are sounding off on Twitter, saying things like, "My family uninvited one of my aunts to Thanksgiving because she voted for Trump." And dreading Thanksgiving, to be honest, "My whole family voted for Trump and they're just going to ridicule me because he won."
Oh, that's not nice.
That's sad, right? So I've been very vocal about my family rift on this issue. I have an aunt that's pro-super Hillary. She's with her. My mom is on the Trump train, has been for a year and a half. It's delicate. David, do you think that this is kind of thing that people just need to get over? Or are you looking forward to inviting that? You sound like you like this kind of thing, David. I think you're just ready. Look at you, ready to roast some people
Your
right
mom's
now.
invited over to my table.
What about
anytime for
Ashira? She
Thanksgiving.
can't come?
And then I won't. I'm just kidding. No, look, politics and religion are the things you always kind of kept away from the dinner table. Yeah. But politics and civics engagement, and people are starting to learn more, has happened. This is natural, folks. It's not a matter of getting over it. It's you've got to get past it.
Yeah.
And now let's have a debate. Let's really talk about issues. Let's engage each other. I'm fine with that. And then go play football and sleep on turkey.
Yeah.
Melissa, what do you think about this? Because I feel like people got really kind of in their feelings this election cycle. So this is not just cerebral debate about policy and conservatism versus liberalism. This is something more, right?
See, I think it's been really tough. I mean, I think it's been one of those things where families are really divided and have been fighting with each other a lot. And for people to say that they don't want to go to Thanksgiving because they're going to be ridiculed, I mean, to me, that is a little bit sad. I think that we need to take a break and kind of put it on ice for Thanksgiving and maybe not bring it up. Like, you could say ahead of time. I mean, I've gone to dinners recently where I've said to people, especially because, you know, they know I work for Fox, they want to talk to me about it. I've said when we get there, hey, listen, we're not going to talk about politics at all at this dinner. Let's not bring it up. I think we need to take a break.
Yeah, football Sundays in my house are football.
Yeah.
No politics.
Take a break.
So how about that, Lisa? Do we take the break, as Melissa's suggesting, or do we use this as an opportunity to say, maybe we can't disagree respectfully with people we don't know, but at least we can get it right within our families?
Well, yeah, I find that ridiculous. This just isn't something that I've ever really experienced with my family. Like, there haven't been these sort of heated...
Agree? But you guys all
we don't all agree, but it's not like no one's not going to get invited because they disagree with someone, right? And also, like, you should be able to be surrounded with people that disagree with your political ideology. That is, and you know what? You don't really believe in what you believe in if you can't take that conversation to someone else who disagrees with you. That's what this country is about. I mean, is to surround yourself with people that have different opinions.
I'm all about strategies and systems. I mean,
I love that about you, Kennedy.
You know, I think the first thing you can do is when you show up at Thanksgiving dinner, bring 3 friends. Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, and Tom Perignon. And then
you won't remember it.
If you get into an uncomfortable discussion at the
Oh,
food
no.
line,
That is going to make it worse.
no,
Scotch there.
here's
I
what you
think
do.
it's okay.
Here's what you do, and it works every time.
Yeah.
You go up to the person, and instead of engaging in the political vitriol, you give them a long, uncomfortable hug, and you don't let go.
Just hold it tight. Bring it in. Speaking of bringing it in, stay tuned. More Outnumbered in just a moment.
As you are brining your bird and chopping up the holy trinity, the carrots, celery, and onions, we want to say thank you to David Webb. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
David.
ladies.
Thank you, David.
And Ebony, Lisa, Melissa, let's all
Thank
go
you.
have a fantastic
Oh,
Thanksgiving.
I'm going to stuff myself.
Oh, I'm
Because I'm
already
eating
guys.
everything.
All the
Eat her
stuffing.
weight in turkey and yams.
Yes.
We're going to be back on TV Friday at noon Eastern. Good news for you. Happening Now starts right now.